All right, we're live.
Hey, there we go. We're going.
Hey, all right. All right, I'm Dan, and that's Dave.
I'm Dave.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the premise of this is that in our talking and group chatting and stuff, somebody ends up inevitably saying, this should be a podcast. So that's basically what we're doing and trying to avoid cancellation in the process.
We are that clever. That's how we came up with the name. So, let's do the intro then.
Yeah,
let's
do the
go
intro.
with that. Okay. Dude, who did we pay for that intro?
Nobody. Judah made that one.
Good Lord.
All right. Episode 1, topic 1. So we figured we would keep it light and talk about something that only a few wars have been started over: free speech, censorship, and the Sons of King Kong's.
It got cut off. King Kong's what? His head.
Stay tuned to find out.
Which King Kong appendage are we discussing? That's not.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Serious topic number 1.
Yep.
Why don't you go first? Because I actually don't know entirely what you think about this.
Well, I mean, which part do you want to start from? So how about, are we talking government type free speech censorship, or are we talking about just general censorship and the general in the main in the culture?
Well, that was the conundrum I was going to talk about, but you tell me what you think first.
Well, okay. I mean, so get the obvious stuff out of the way, right? So this is what no show prep looks like. Yes. So free speech, obviously. Right. So we're talking for free speech. That's a government entity type of thing. So the government can't abridge your right to speech. You can't, whatever. Like Facebook isn't a government entity. Facebook can really do whatever they want. They're a private company, theoretically. But like the government cannot suppress free speech. So when people say free speech and they say the First Amendment, violations of the First Amendment, that's not normally, I think, what people are talking about nowadays. Because there are instances of free speech violations from the federal government or state government, but that's not the big cultural issue. I'm assuming that's not what you were wanting to talk about.
Well, I mean, it's not what people. It's not what's coming up in conversation recently.
Yeah, right? I mean,
When was the last time somebody protested because the government, infringed on their speech? That's
correct. But people use. But I guess what point being, people say First Amendment stuff. They go, "Oh, it's my First Amendment right," and then the obvious rejoinder is, "Obviously, it's not the First Amendment, retard, because Facebook's not the government." So, like, that's the thing you have to kind of get out of the way, I guess, before you start the conversation, if that makes sense. Yeah.
No, right. So my whole point is, I think that something that gets lost in the conversation is that, like, I don't know. Somebody said, I was probably some smart person said, like, government is downstream of culture. Right. So what the culture is doing, eventually that will become law later on. Right. So, people were having relaxed attitudes towards all kinds of like civil rights and things with the drug legalization and all this kind of stuff in their culture long before those became enshrined in law. So the idea that, like, because what happens is somebody will say something like, they'll talk about the concept of like free speech with lowercase f. And they'll be like, well, our principles of free speech, we really need to have people say what they think. And then that's part of the marketplace of ideas. And somebody says, well, you know what? I can tell you to shut up. And it's not a violation of free speech because it's not a law. Right. And it's like, yeah, but if we are ingraining the younger generation and our friends, if we are normalizing the idea that, like, well, that person doesn't deserve to talk purely because I don't like what they have to say, it's only a matter of time until some crackpot figures out a way to turn that into a law.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
And then that's bad for everybody.
Right. And just to be perfectly honest with you, I don't really appreciate or emphasize the idea of the free speech versus the censorship in my own life or my own thought process, because the government doesn't get to do things that private organizations can't do. So really, it kind of works in the flip on this one. So everyone's like, yes, the government can't abridge my right to speak, but private corporations can, I guess, in certain instances. But that's like a weird dichotomy for me, because normally it's the other way around. People are like, well, you can't rob, steal, and beat people up, but the government can, and we call that law and order. Or we call
they have the monopoly on violence.
Exactly. So it's kind of, this is like a flip, almost reverse. It's like the monopoly on censorship or anti lowercase free speech is allowable in the public sphere and not in the public, or excuse me, in the private sphere, not in the public sphere. Even though in all reality, the government abridges and violates free speech all the time, but we're not super worried about that.
Yeah. So I mean, like,
guy. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, there's a whole thing about, like, I make this joke all the time where it's like, conservatives, right-wing people, they tend to not like a big monolithic government, right? Big old government, and then people on the left, your progressive sides, they don't like giant monolithic corporations because they, they're emblematic of like the capitalist machine or whatever. And then like the libertarian viewpoint, I guess, is more like, well, how about they're both monolithic organizations of people that are probably trying to control what you're doing. So how about, why can't we just be cynical of both of them?
Yes.
You know what I mean? And put limits on both of those kinds of things. Because up until recently, the only things that were really large enough to infringe on your free speech were governments.
Yeah,
but now, but because of technology and all this kind of stuff, you have, Facebook is itself as large as any country in the world in terms of its influence and its power, right? Same thing with Google. So it's like, what's really the functional difference between Facebook making arbitrary, basically declaring people persona non grata, then what's the difference between that and a government doing so? There's different kinds of ways that Facebook can hurt you versus a government, but in terms of size, it's not that much different.
No, not actually. It's actually in a lot of ways more far-reaching on the individual level, because everyone's connected and has that direct access to Facebook or Twitter or whatever other social media you want to log on to.
What would happen if this was like 1982 and AT&T decided that if you had the wrong opinion, you couldn't use the phone?
Yeah. Or like the early 90s when like everyone's starting to pick up on the internet. So like, well, you're on the outs with the politically incorrect here, so you can't have access to the World Wide Web, the www dots and all those things. Yeah, that would be. Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty good direct equivalent, I think. That's the thing. Like, is it a utility, I guess, as opposed to a corporate? I mean, it's a private company, or like that, and like people make the argument about like it's the public square. It's the equivalent of the public square, which I don't know if I buy that or not, but I mean, it kind of is. I see that total argument because everybody and their grandmother, is on social media. Literally, the president of the United States and like 7-year-old kids have social media, and like you can theoretically interact with each other, and that is the public square. So, and the whole point of not being able to restrict people to speak their minds and to say what they want in the public square is kind of the heart of the uppercase First Amendment. Anyway, so I mean, I see the parallels for sure. And you're right. I think, but the culture is downstream from government, I think is legit in a lot of ways for sure. And yeah, man, I mean, because theoretically, right, a representative democracy, the people have these ideas, the people put forth and move ahead with a societal kind of evolution, and those people vote. Those people vote for laws, and that's how it supposedly is supposed to work. Theoretically, I guess. I'm not sure if it really does. And I don't know who that guy is, but we keep showing him, so that's cool. I'm not up on my South Park villains.
I haven't watched South Park in a while.
Me neither.
Well, see, so here's the thing that it annoys me, like when, so somebody says, like I was saying earlier, like when somebody somebody gets canceled, right, or somebody gets kicked off of whatever platform, it's like, they say, well, it's not the government doing it, so it doesn't count as free speech. These people have the right to cancel who they want. But the problem is that like I said, I think we're indoctrinating the next generation of I don't know, people our kids' age to not be able to handle criticism. And to me, that's like, I don't know, that's one of the ultimate weaknesses. Like something I've been thinking about a lot, and you probably feel the same way because we knew a lot of the same people growing up. But it's like part of what annoys me about kind of the religion of wokeness that's kind of happening now on the internet. And setting aside whether any particular viewpoints, left or right, are more or less correct or whatever, but the idea that like, I think it bothers you and me because we know that personality type who it's almost like it's clearly a sign of insecurity where they know that if they got into a conversation about like a deep topic or whatever, they don't really feel entirely confident about their ability to listen and pick up on what somebody else is saying and go, okay, yeah, I see what you're saying. I disagree on this part, but
Sure.
really, what's this? People are just not good at debating, or they're not good at like debating without arguing and taking everything personal. So, and they get like flustered and they kind of freak out. He's like, well, you're just wrong, and we saw those people growing up, and and it's like, there were things you just couldn't even say, there were questions you couldn't ask,
Right.
like Bart Simpson at Sunday school, just like, hey, are there going to be monkeys and cavemen in heaven or whatever it is? And they're like, shut up, Bart. And it's like, that's kind of how I think, we're used to kind of seeing those kind of personality types. And we're like, well, some people are just wired that way, I think. But it's like, now you get people who are like that, but kind of, on a whole different cultural spectrum.
Right.
And, rather than be like, okay, well, you know what? How about this? If this other person's idea is so stupid and it's so morally wrong, it shouldn't be that hard for you to own them in a discussion or to disprove them, right? Like, if somebody starts going into a conversation, you're like, well, the statistics and the facts say this, and your immediate reaction is to run. I don't know. Facts aren't a good thing to run from, right? So it's like, I don't know. It feels like a real like a beta move. You know what I mean? Like the kind of person who's like, like overly worried about what other people are saying about them is like, well, what are they saying? What are they saying? Like, whereas a person, and this isn't like a man-woman thing. This could be like, either, like a person who is going about their business and like making their dent in the world is unconcerned what other random people are saying about them, because
correct.
If they're about their purpose, then they know they got they got reality and the facts on their side and that kind of stuff. And so people who to me, it represents an insecurity when somebody seems like they're almost emotionally invested in making sure that certain viewpoints that they don't have don't even get verbalized. You know what I mean? I'm like, okay, well, are you happy? I don't know.
Yeah, no, not to get into the psychological stuff. And also with the insecurities, shut up, Dan. All right. I don't want to hear it. But like, I don't know. Yeah, it is. It's like in school, like elementary school, just going to the teacher and telling them what they said and getting them in trouble, sending them to detention. It is literally like adult detention and like adult, social prison to get people canceled. Again, everyone hates that term and uses that term probably over too much. But I mean, there is really something to it, man. I mean, like people will just go after ideas they don't like and not refute them, not argue with them. Because I spent way too many hours of my life arguing with people on Facebook. I never once ever thought I should go to someone's employer, their family, or their friends and be like, get this guy either somehow socially reprimanded or I don't know.
Yeah.
That seems crazy to me. Like either you talk it out or you get out of the game, man. Just go shut up and live your life in the corner.
And if you lose, it's like, okay, well, is there a way that I could have made my point better? Like maybe I'm wrong. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, it's two things. It's either you suck at arguing, you don't have good convincing arguments, and you don't have all your ducks in a row, or you're wrong, and then you should probably change your opinion. So, I mean, those are both scarier things than going, nah, you know what? Everyone else is terrible. I'm awesome, and let's just keep it that way. But
yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, I don't know.
But
go ahead.
No, I was gonna say though, but yeah, like with the whole cultural push thing, it's from like a libertarian kind of thing, like you were sort of talking about earlier. So like obviously a business can do what they want, a social media platform can do what they want, but should they? Like that's the whole thing. So like freedom of speech aside from the government issue, like is censorship a good thing in the main for a society, for a group of people, for an individual, for a family, for anything? Like, do you want to just block out viewpoints for anything you are uncomfortable with? And I think that's a negative thing. Like, obviously, from a libertarian's point of view, and this is super unpopular, you'd be like, you know what? If I own my business and I don't want to do business with black people, with white people, with women, with people who own dogs, that is my right to do it. And that might be immoral. It might be stupid. It might be counterproductive, but it's your right to do it. But you shouldn't say, well, that's a good thing, right? I mean, like as a libertarian, you would go, well, yeah, you have the right, you have every right to do it. And also you're a complete jackass for doing it and you should not do it. And it's of course,
two things can be true at once.
Wow. That's amazing. Are you sure? I'm not sure if that's true. Maybe 1.5 things, but yeah, I know. Right. Exactly. Two things can be true at the same time. You can be allowed to do it and you can be terrible for doing it. And I think that's kind of where we're at. And it's hard for that distinction to be drawn for a lot of people just because, and it's so funny too, because like it's totally choose your own adventure. Like when a when a Christian baker has to bake a cake for a gay wedding. It's just like, well, no, you can't just not bake that cake for the gay guy. You're like, well, it's his own business. He can do what he wants. Like, no. Government has to step in. But like with Facebook and Twitter or whatever, they're like, we want to kick these people off. And you're like, well, I don't like their viewpoints and it's their own business. They should be able to do whatever they want. They don't have to serve their customers. That's that. It's okay. But again, it's total tribalism and pick your own teams. And it goes both ways, conservative Republicans and, liberal Democrats and everyone in between will just find that one thing. They're like, that person got canceled. I'm glad. Like, oh my God, my favorite guy got canceled. That sucks. That shouldn't happen. It's so stupid. And it's everywhere. It's in every little freaking ingrained portion of our public discourse, and it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, I think it represents. I mean, I don't know what it is. Is it
America sucks?
Say what?
Americans suck. That's
well, like okay,
myself included.
Well, maybe is it because we had cool teachers? I think back, like,
maybe.
Well, maybe. Okay.
No, I'm just kidding.
But like, I remember, like, when we were in high school, like, the best classes we had was the ones where we were kind of being dicks, and like, asking, like, in hindsight, thinking back, like, why didn't anybody smack us? You know what I mean? Like, I'm surprised, like, we didn't get thrown out, but maybe it's because, like, where we were, the intellectual pursuits were respected. I guess the curiosity. You know what I mean?
One word, 3 syllables, tuition. This is a very small school. Come on.
Yeah, that's true. Well,
no, I'm just joking. That's the cynical. That's the cynical outlook on it. No, I think you're right though. I mean, like, I don't know, man. Like, obviously we were smart-assy and stuff, but I mean, there were conversations that were good and like actual points were brought up and arguments made and pushback. Like, I think there's some healthy, good pushback on the little private school level we had.
Yeah, which, I mean, I remember when I was in college, like, there wasn't discussion. You know what I mean? Like, there was a little bit. I remember there was one guy. This was like 2004. This one guy, this sort of like kind of waspy, kind of frat white dude guy was like, I think things are getting done in Iraq, man. I'm just saying. And like, I didn't really have a strong opinion about any of that back then, but like, I remember him kind of even then he was kind of like ousted from the, you could tell there was like a vibe in the class for like the rest of the semester, because he was like, this is right when the Iraq war was starting and all this kind of stuff. And it was, I don't know. I mean,
I remember in college, man, where there was like a protest outside of like the student center or the lunchroom or whatever, the cafeteria, I don't remember. And it was like students and faculty and staff and stuff. They were all chanting. So I walked up to one of them and I was like, hey, can you just give me a quick rundown of what your thoughts are on when we should pull out, why we should pull out? And he just interrupted me and started calling me a fascist. I was like, oh, cool, good. I'm a fascist just for asking you a question there, professor. I was like, that's a real productive conversation. So, I mean, I was legitimately asking, and like, I was kind of like a generic Republican neocon because I knew no better. And I just thought I could talk to somebody, and that was a mistake. That can't happen.
You were doing the change my mind stuff before it was cool.
Oh yeah, right. Man, I should have cashed in on that. Should have got a mug going.
Registered that domain name. Yeah. Well, I remember there was this crazy preacher guy at UNC. Like, he would stand out in the middle of the quad
seafood
there.
festival. The seafood festival guys do that too.
Yeah, well, this guy was crazier than that. He was like, he would have like, like the sign that was like attached to his back and it would go way up and talk about like all the people that weren't getting into heaven and stuff. And he would just he had this big boomy voice and he was just proclaiming all kinds of stuff like those guys from They Live, and like, and people would just like walk by him and just like hurl obscenities at him and stuff. But like back then, that part of the campus was specifically called a free speech zone, and people didn't really give him that much crap. They were just kind of like letting him do his thing. Everybody thought he was crazy, even the people who technically belong to the same religion as he claims to were like, we don't even give him any. But I think everybody understood, this was 2005, that, well, if we don't let that guy talk, then where do those views go? Do they go into the the mountains of somewhere, you know what I mean? And then you got meetings and
they go underground and they gain truth and momentum and they gather followers, and the righteous come forth in the version of QAnon.
Well, right. So I mean, I've been talking about this, for a while. Like, you literally, I mean, somebody could draw a causal connection between what they call cancel culture, even though that's an overused term, and all the stuff that happened in January, right? Because it's like that stuff. I don't know. I'm not an expert on it, but it's like I would bet a few bucks that the fervor of all of that kind of stuff, of everybody complaining about the election being stolen, all the fraud and all these little theories that go on that happen in the bubble, I don't think that happens if you don't kick them off of the major platforms.
Well, yeah, exactly. No, it pushes it underground, and
where they don't hear anything else, and everybody just like a flat earther group, and everybody just talks to each other.
Yeah, and then B, they have to go to different sections of the web, which are more of an echo chamber, as opposed to like on Facebook or Twitter. If you say some stupid QAnon crap, you're going to get ratioed pretty hard. Yeah. Or you have I mean, depends on what circles you're running in. You know, you have that ability. However, if you're going to like, yeah, that guy, nice. If you're going to like some deep dark 4chan or 13chan or whatever they are, that kind of chat room thing. Yeah, you're like you're murdering goats and you're talking about child sacrifice, and that's just weird. But yeah, I mean, that's an unhealthy or unintended consequences of blocking out information from the public arena that you don't want to see or you deem as dangerous, and then you can actually make it more dangerous in a lot of ways, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a fundamental. I think the reason it's a fundamental American ideal. I mean, I'm not an expert in all the sort of the philosophical, John Locke and all these David Hume and all these people that influenced the founding fathers and stuff. But like, I came up with this idea a while back that I was like, well, why is it that capitalism works so well in the world? It's not a perfect system, of course, but like, it's like, because it's the best expression of like, it's like natural selection in biology, but like in economic terms, like if something's good, it survives. And if something's not good, it dies. Now that's harsh and it's brutal, right? So, it behooves us as caring human beings to kind of care for each other. But as a principle, it produces, wealth and progress. So it's like free speech is like kind of the same thing. It's like natural selection of ideas. You know what I mean? Because if you don't let certain ideas exist, or if you try to make them not exist, then the ideas that are allowed don't get to adapt to their environment perfectly, and so they actually become less strong. You know what I mean? It's like people grow up and they never hear anything else, and then they go to college and they hear somebody saying something opposite of them for the first time. They're like, "Holy crap!" And then all of a sudden, I'm just going to change all of my viewpoints, right? And so,
no, it's like the super homeschool, super Christian school kid that goes to college. They're like, "Hey, man, Jesus is pretty good." Someone's like, "God doesn't exist." They're like, "Oh no, I never thought of that."
Yeah, and then 6 months later, they're like,
It's over, man.
6 months later, they're at an Antifa rally throwing a Molotov cocktail.
Like, no one ever mentioned that God doesn't exist to me before in my 18 years of living. Yeah, no, that's a really good example, and I think that crap happens a lot too, man. So, but that's its own subculture problem.
Yeah, I mean, I've learned more in my adult life. I won't say more, but like some of the most interesting things that I've learned, or in like personal growth that I've experienced, have been in the past 5-10 years, which is after the average time that I feel like most people kind of decide who they are and what they think.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like the kind of person who never discovered a new band after the age of 25, and they're still listening to the same stuff they liked when they were 18. You know what I mean? I feel like a lot of people do that with their viewpoints. You know what I mean? But I'm like, I want to be that person who's still discovering cool bands when they're 80 years old.
Yeah. First of all, I still love Jimmy Eat World. Every album they put out's amazing. So I'm not stopping there. And yeah, no, you got to test your ideas. And you got to, right, exactly. There's always room to grow, and there's always room to be wrong. There's always nuances, and there's always ways to hone in your own, viewpoints and better fit reality.
Well, I think, a lot of it maybe comes from, culturally, there's a whole our generation, maybe people younger, maybe older, I don't know, but it's like it's finding your identity and your purpose is hard. I mean, that's always been the case, right? But like, so it's a very easy thing to be like, well, here's a group of people. What do they do? Well, they talk a lot and they say these phrases. I'm like, okay, well, I can join that group and act like they do. And so then all of a sudden, by the time you realize what's happening, you've built your sense of purpose and identity on phrases and saying stuff and, being able to point to a villain or villains. Right. And it's like, and then when somebody attacks that viewpoint because they think that maybe it's not correct or it's not based in reality or something like that, they're not just attacking a viewpoint, big from a dork level. They're like, they're attacking you personally. Right. And then once somebody starts taking something personally, then it's almost impossible to have a conversation. Right. Because now it's an emotional question and it's not antiseptic.
Yeah, no, that's real true. And I had forgotten all about free speech zones on college campuses. Is that still a thing? It can't be.
I have no idea.
There's no way that's
Maybe.
still a thing. There's no way. That can't be allowed. That's like, but like even then, I mean, just think about that. What was that? You said like 2005 or something?
Yeah,
Where they
I
had,
mean,
where like it was getting to the point where there was this bubble over of I'm not allowing people to speak on campus, and someone's like, no, let's just have a small spot where you can like stand there and say something, and then
Yeah.
get yelled at and
it's like
screamed at.
smokers. You know,
Right?
you can have
Exactly. It's like the
smoking
smoking section back in.
section, but
Yeah.
eventually it's
Ugh.
like you got to be a
Ugh.
quarter mile down the road. But
Yeah.
well, I think part of it comes from, and then like, there's probably a larger discussion here about like whatever is the counterculture. Everyone wants to feel like they're the counterculture because that's more cool, right? So it's like, yeah, we're going to protest the war. It's like, okay, well, that was kind of a non-mainstream feeling like in the 70s or even in the 2000s,
Yeah.
right? And so for most of, I guess, American history, kind of left-wing viewpoints have been sort of anti-establishment, right? They've been sort of counterculture. And it's only in the last probably a decade and a half, maybe, where a left-wing viewpoint has become mainstream. And so like that's become the sort of typical viewpoint. And I'm not trying to make a point about like whether the left or the right is more correct or better or anything, but it's just a simple fact, right? The establishment is now a liberal, progressive, left-leaning viewpoint.
Yeah.
And so I feel like we as a culture, we're still getting used to the idea of right-wing being over here, like kind of not cool. You know what I mean? So it's like, you know what I'm saying?
I do. Yes, no, I agree. Actually, and it's so funny, man. Like, someone way smarter than me has made this point like several times. So, like, you're right. Like, this left wing counterculture thing, we're used to push against big corporations. You know, the capitalist enclaves that were oppressing people, right? And like that all kind of accumulated in the early 2000s with like Occupy Wall Street and like all this stuff where like the financial collapse came and like people's lives were ruined and people were just like, I'm fed up with this freaking Wall Street, the big banks, all these huge corporations getting bailout money, and we got like $350 from George Bush. So then then you get all this momentum, this like 99% movement thing, whatever you think about it. But they're like, oh no, you know what? Guess what? These people are actually rising up against us, and this isn't good. So what we need to do is we need to make them kind of think like we agree with them, and they're kind of on our side. So they go, oh yeah, you're right. No, that's all bad. No, we're with you. We're the 99. Black Lives Matter. Oh yeah, Oh, transgender rights. Oh yeah, no, we're all with that. Oh what? Anything, any hot topic issue that's like a left wing thing that you can glob on a corporate sense. Now the left wing goes, Pepsi's my savior because they posted a George Floyd meme or something like that. Like Pepsi is manipulating you to sell you sugary drinks that are killing you. Let's be honest. Everyone's just like, they're socially, they're woke and it's great. Like, so basically corporations have taken this woke culture posture to allow them to have cover for the people that were backlashing them, like coming at them hard. And now it's reversed. Like now conservatives and like Republicans are all like, these freaking corporations are the worst thing ever. They're oppressing you. They're manipulating you. They are lying to you. It's like, it's a stupid flipping thing that just happens every couple generations or every 10 to 15 years. Exactly. Yeah. It's crazy, man. But I just thought that was a pretty brilliant point. And people want to make money and they're going to sell you all sorts of crap in pursuit of making money, not even necessarily what they're selling. So it's silly.
Yeah.
I don't know,
solve it? Did we solve it or we figured it out?
No, I don't think we did. But all right, so maybe we should pivot for the next like 10 minutes to the most pressing conversation of our day is why the hell is King Kong so big in King Kong versus Godzilla? Because
I mean, there's the actual answer is because of dollars. I mean, Legendary bought the rights to Kong and Godzilla, and they were like, we need to have them fight. And so, well, why don't we just make him that size? They don't really provide an actual explanation. So in the Kong movie, like from 2017, right at the end, there's like a dubbed over line like John C. Reilly says, he's just a kid. He's still growing, or whatever. And basically because the whole reason that movie exists was so that eventually they could fight. So, and that movie took place in the 70s. So they're like, all right, well then now, do the math. I guess by the time it gets to 2021, he'll be roughly Godzilla size. And I don't know.
Okay, so no
But-
reason. That's
well,
fine.
there's no
That's fine.
scientific reason. I mean, there's no scientific reason for any of the stuff that happens in those movies.
Well,
I mean,
of
the
course
Earth
not.
can't be hollow. I mean, that's impossible, right?
All right, whatever, Dan. Okay, sure. It can be. Have you been there? No, you haven't. No, it's just so stupid. Like I was laughing the whole time. I was like, me and Gabe are talking. He's like, that was a really good fight. I was like, did you see all the old? No, you've not seen all the old King Kong movies. You've watched old Godzilla movies. We're like, King Kong was like climbing a skyscraper, and now he's the size of a skyscraper. I was just like, I don't know, man. It doesn't add up.
Yeah, I mean,
That's all
it's not classic Kong because he doesn't have the same origin story. You know what I mean? I mean,
Mm.
I guess he is on an old island or whatever. But like
new Kong, classic Kong's always better. Or like,
dude, the 1933 Kong really holds up well.
yeah, it's really good.
We watched.
what's
it
the one-
recently.
What's the one with is it who's in it in like in the 70s? The one from the 70s is good too.
That one is well, okay. So my theory about the King Kong movies, there's three of them. I mean, the three major ones, right? 33, 76, and 05. They're all like equally good for their time, right? But they all have problems, right? So
but that's the same story arc trajectory. Yes, it's the same story more or less.
well, sort of,
three-
except
those
the Peter Jackson's version takes place in the 30s, right? So it's like a throwback, but it's way too much like self-indulgent. Like, hey kids, remember this stuff from the 30s? And we're like, no, we don't. Like,
No, we don't. It's, yeah,
right. The 70s one actually has the best human characters of any of them, probably because its effects are the worst. So they're like, all right, well, we have to spend time with these human
we
characters.
have to act.
Our Kong looks horrible, right? Whereas the original version, people were just so wowed by the effects they didn't care if the characters were just like cliches.
Mhm.
And then the one in 2005, it's like this is really 3 hours long. Like,
That was very long.
yeah.
Yeah. No, I don't know. It was all right.
I
However,
mean, I loved it when it came out because I had watched the original one like as a kid, so I was like, I recognized all the references, and I was like, I guess I was young, I had a lot of energy, so like starting a 3 hour movie at 10:30 wasn't weird, But like when you get older and you start having kids and like careers and stuff, and you're like, all right, can we do this in a tight 100 minutes? Like, how much story do you got here?
Yeah, did you see that in the theater?
Yeah, I went with Jeremy.
Really?
Well, because we were
sounds
going
right.
to go with some other people, and then they bailed, and then the only showing that was available was like 10 o'clock. We're like, all right, let's go. And then it was like
Yeah.
1:30 in the morning. We were driving.
I would have been asleep like before the credits are over at a 10 o'clock movie in a theater,
Yeah,
even in 2005, because I'm old.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
We can do it. I have all kinds of thoughts about the movie implications of all the monster stuff. We can talk about that some other time.
Yeah, I don't care. So I don't think we should. No, we could. I don't care.
Gabe
But, like,
cares.
Gabe would care, but he's asleep, so I can't bring
we
him
can
in
get
right now.
both of our sons on here, and we can talk about Godzilla movies for a half hour.
That would be funny, actually. Gabe will have. Well, he's more of a yeah. No, he definitely has the Godzilla vibe. He's only watched like 3 or 4 of them, so and a couple of old ones, which he thought was cool.
We watched one the
But-
other day that was from like the 90s, and it was clearly even the American actors in the movie were redubbed with new American
Yep.
voices. It was pretty terrible, but
Are they planning on any other movies in the vein with the Godzilla and the King Kong? I mean, what else?
I would not. Well, it's okay. So technically, the Kong license that was licensed over to Legendary is over with this movie. But I think that was the reason they
Disney
did
should
that.
buy it.
Well, because the last movie didn't make the money that they wanted to, they didn't really expect this one to make as much money as it did. And then when
Mhm.
Godzilla vs. Kong kind of became a bit of a surprise hit, they were like, what do we do? And so it wouldn't surprise me if they come up with a reason to make more, but like
Right.
they just have to renegotiate the contract or whatever. But there's
So which one? The Skull Island movie didn't do well.
the King of the
Kong one?
Monsters didn't do as well.
Godzilla King of the Monsters.
Right. Which was
Right.
a shame because that's to me the best movie of the whole series.
Yeah, that wasn't too bad.
But like it, I guess it was 2019. It was a very crowded year for movies. There was like Avengers and all this kind of stuff going on. So it didn't like bring down box office records like they hoped it would. But they had already basically made half of Godzilla versus Kong by that point. So they're like, all right, we got to see it through. And then the pandemic happened. Everything got delayed. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not a Hollywood expert, but
Have you been
I'm always down for more of them. So.
Have you been to a theater since COVID and all that stuff? Have you gone since they've opened up?
Well, yeah, we did Godzilla vs. Kong. That was the first time we went to a theater since
us too.
a while back. And then
Yep.
we did the other day we did a Levi's birthday and we watched Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, where you could like rent out a theater for like $100 and you get like 20 people.
Cool.
It was
Really?
cool. We had all the relatives and stuff, and but you're by yourself, so you can just like make cracks and do Sean Connery voices and stuff. And throw popcorn at each other. It was fun.
That's neat. That's a really cool idea.
Yeah, it was fun.
That's awesome. I wish there was something like that around here. I really wish there was like yeah, there's nothing in Carter County. Come on, man. I gotta go to Havelock to go to a theater. Not really. I'm too lazy for that. I just go to Emerald Isle. I'm like, I'm not going to Havelock. That's too far. Havelock. That's too far for anything.
Yeah. All right. Do we want to decide on next week's topic, or we got to figure that out between us?
Nah, we'll have to figure that out.
All right.
Not that anyone's listening right now and they would care if we were just riffing on what we wanted to talk about.
Yeah, probably
Maybe.
not.
Yeah, that's okay. I mean, we have 5 more minutes to fill. So
We do?
yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, we went 5 minutes over, and we made the executive decision to go another 5. So
Yeah, okay. I dig that.
yeah, sure, why not? So what'd you think?
About
This
this?
fun. Yeah,
Yeah, this
fun.
works.
Yeah, I'm down with that.
You'll have to explain to me, maybe not today, but like at some point. I think the last time we talked about this was like 4 or 5 years ago. What exactly is your political viewpoint? Like, that's a huge question, right? Because it's like, I feel like we mostly agree on like a lot of sort of the principles stuff, you know what I mean? Of like sort of non-aggression and individual rights and all these kinds of things. But I think where you deviate from sort of the typical person that one was likely to meet on the street is like the structure of it.
You
know what I mean?
I am no structure. Divine monarchist, man.
Wait,
Jesus
what is it?
King. Divine monarchist. Jesus is king. No king but Christ, buddy. No, but seriously,
autonomous collective.
I mean, from a political point of view, like anarchist, voluntarist would be my position. So I don't think that force is allowable. Initiation of force is allowable. Force is allowable in a defensive posture kind of thing. So government is precluded for a appropriate way for human beings to interact. Now, there are going to be governments. Those things are ordained by God. They're there. They can be good. They almost all are bad. It's not appropriate for me as a person who believes in these things to really get involved as much as I can in those things. Does that make sense? Like,
no, that makes sense.
I don't vote. I'm not planning on ever voting again. I don't really support political action in any sort of way. Although I guess in a defensive way you could do it. That means you're voting. I don't know. It gets a little hairy. All in all, though, I steer clear of it because it's good for my soul, and I think it's probably wiser. Now, I like talking about it and following it and obsessing over it to a small degree, but that's kind of where I'm at with it. That's a 1,000-foot level overview of where I'm at. Yeah, but I think we do agree on probably most of everything in that kind of vein. Yeah,
well, I think the difference is going to come in where it's like almost maybe a pragmatic prediction of what is likely to work, more so than like what things like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that on any sort of moral grounds. I would probably disagree on basis of like, is that going to work? You know what I mean? Like that feels like a recipe for complete chaos. But
well, I would leave you just with a quick thought. I mean, out of the hundreds of interactions you have a day with people, how many times do you put a gun in their back and make them do what you want them to do? Very few. Yes. Usually 0. So if you do that 100 times a day without doing it, let's see how long you do it in a week, how long you do it, or how many times you do it in a month, and just go, wow, could I actually just live in a voluntary kind of way with people? I think you could. I think you can. I don't think people are. I would say that with a lowercase c. Sure, that's fair. Yeah, I'm okay with that. Now, and also, and it's just funny too, because people are like, well, I don't think it would work the other way. We're like, well, like, does the American government work? I mean, we've killed as a government thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people across the planet over the course of our existence. I don't know if that's exactly the kosher way to go. I don't know if I don't know, whatever. The only thing I kneel for is the cross and the flag thing kind of works out from a Christian point of view. But so really for me, it's a moral thing for me. Pragmatic, I don't know if that's the case. And I don't think Not that I think my position's ever going to be one that's held by a wide view of people, but yeah, man. Eventually, Divine Monarchy is going to win, so let's stick with that.
Okay, well, that's
Okay.
right. All right, well, maybe we'll get into something. We'll get into that later on.
Oh, that'd be fun. Yeah, sure. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm down.
There. Cool.
Okay, so
I
this
think-
was a reasonably successful experiment of This Should Be the Podcast.
This was. I'm happy with that.
If anybody
think
wants
I
to be added to our group chat where we talk about this stuff all
Yeah. Lay it
or
on.
if anybody would like to be removed from the group chat, Jeremy.
If anybody was offended by this,
We have to get
Shouldn't be.
Jeremy on just so he can be
shouldn't be.
embarrassed.
I think Jeremy's the only person we can talk about on a first name basis on this podcast. Everything else we have to keep tight-lipped. So it won't be fair.
Yeah. I mean, I can think of a
And-
few people, but yeah.
Well, if we get express written consent, we'll throw that in there.
Yeah.
But for now, maybe just we'll just make fun of Jeremy, and people won't even know who don't know us if Jeremy's even real. This will be fun. Maybe we can have maybe Jeremy can be our QAnon. He can be a Q, and he can direct us. Okay, we gotta go.
Thank you,
All right,
everybody.
we gotta go.
Subscribe
Yeah,
and
thank
like.
you. Yeah,
We'll
all
see you
those
next
things.
week.
Thanks, Dan.